review. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. She is the author of the book Running in Sleepers. No other than Miss Angie Hawkins.
Thank you, Daniel. Thank you for having me.
Welcome to Book 101, Miss Angie, and can you please introduce more about yourself?
Yes. Hi, my name is Angie Hawkins. I am a self love coach and I am the author of Running in Slippers. And Running in Slippers is a memoir that covers it's a 5 year period of my life. And it's a total train wreck. It starts when my boyfriend of 8 years broke up with me. Shortly thereafter, my dad passed away. And it just takes you through these misguided attempts to fill the voids of love and connection. And it's extremely vulnerable. And the reason that I wrote it that way is because I feel that we tend to hide behind social media facades. And even in real life, we all wear everything is fine mask. If someone asks us how we're doing, we don't really tell them what's going on with us. But the truth is, we all go through really hard things in life that and we're just not talking about them. And vulnerability works the opposite way that we think it does, because when you're vulnerable and talk about these hard things that happen in your life, it actually makes you relatable. So the entire goal of the book is connection through vulnerability.
Miss Angie Hawkins, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. Running and sleepers is such a vivid image. What does this metaphor specifically represent about the tensions of women navigate between ambition, comfort, and everyday demands?
So, first of all, I live in Hawaii, and in Hawaii, flip flops are called slippers. So, it really means running in flip flops. The introduction of the book explains exactly why I called it that. So, I won't spoil that part. But you are correct. It is a metaphor, because running in slippers is a metaphor for the journey of life, because it can be playful and fun, but it can also be reckless and dangerous, which is what running in flip flops is.
What personal moment of realization made you think this is it? This is messy, exhausting, a beautiful chaos needs to be a book called Running and Sleepers.
Well, unfortunately, there's more than one moment. Anyone who's read my book knows it's just like a series of disasters and mistakes. But that's exactly why I wrote it, because I think we all make series of mistakes, or we don't always make the best decisions, but we're all doing the best that we can in life. I think there's this perception when we're younger that adults know what they're doing in life, but the truth is none of us know what we're doing. So this is just, again, it's just a snapshot of my life where I'm just fumbling through life. But it covers death. Like, my father died. It covers romantic relationship breakups, friendship breakups. It covers the story. I moved from Chicago to Hawaii by myself. It also covers the COVID pandemic, which I wish I would have written differently in hindsight, because I wrote it in 2021 and it was published in 2022. But I think even now we forget how isolating and lonely that period was, which also exacerbated a lot of my problems because of the mental health issues I was having because of COVID. So, yeah, there's a lot wrapped up into one book.
People don't afraid to commit mistakes or failures because you will learn from them. Your book challenges traditional success narratives. How do you define a fulfilled life when you are sprinting in fussy footwear instead of power heels?
My definition of a fulfilling life is to love yourself and internally validate yourself, because anyone who's read my book will see that I was reaching for all these external sources of validation and happiness, only to find that it comes within myself. So I was looking for it in all of the wrong places.
Miss Angie, how does embracing the sleeper mindset in terms of comfort, imperfection, or partiality become an act of a rebellion against societal pressure?
Yeah, I like that you brought that up because a huge part of who I am is being authentic. And that doesn't necessarily mean conforming with society. So, for example, like I moved from Chicago to Hawaii, and a lot of people thought I was crazy, but that was something that made me happy and what I wanted to do. Whereas so many people were telling me not to do it. So I think we tend to not do things that make us happy because we're getting all this external pressure. So yeah, running in flip flops. I also like how you frame it in terms of rebellion because it's like if you are having fun running in slippers and it makes you happy, and yeah, maybe you'll fall a few times and skin your knees, but if that's how you live your life, then more power to you.
Yes, indeed. How did you learn to distinguish between unhealthy guilt and healthy boundaries that honor your energy and values?
That is a great question because for a long period, actually, most of my adult life, I didn't even know what boundaries were until I was 35 years old. And then once I learned what they were, I wasn't great at setting them. And once I learned what they were and actually learned how to set and enforce boundaries, my mental health improved tremendously because it's so important to be loyal to yourself. And I started a self love coaching business, and boundaries is a huge part of what I teach women because like that is the like setting healthy boundaries is the highest form of self-respect, which is one of the highest forms of self-love. And if you don't take care of yourself, then nobody else will, because you're just demonstrating to other people how to respect you. So if you have strong boundaries, then other people will follow your lead and respect you as well.
Very well said, Miss Angie. Beautifully articulated. Very well said. In a world of curated social media highlights reels, how do you help readers silence the noise and focus on their versions of progress?
Yeah, I mean, in the book, I drop all of the mask. I did have to edit to keep down the size. The original length of the book was twice the size, so I did have to edit for brevity. But again, I did not paint myself in a good light at all. I think some books are edited, or even our Instagram grids, are edited to make ourselves cast in this perfect light. But I did not cast myself in that light at all because, again, like we don't connect by being perfect, we connect by being real. So I wanted to establish that relationship with the reader. Like, this is real life. I hope this is relatable to you. And I have found that it is.
What's one non negotiable practice you use to preserve your mental or physical energy when demands are relentless?
It's a good question. My one non negotiable practice is I do at least one thing every day that brings me joy. Generally, that entails surfing because I love being in the ocean, I love being in the sun, and that's an activity I enjoy. It's not always practical to go surfing every day. So, at the very least, I like to take a mindful walk in nature, even if it's just a short walk. But just like we can have practices of self sabotaging or negative practices that are dysfunctional, we can also develop self love practices that are very functional and help us develop in life. So, I highly recommend to anyone just doing one thing a day that brings you joy because it can be so simple, even dancing for 3 minutes, because most songs are like not over 4 minutes these days. So it can be something very simple and such a great gift to yourself.
Self love, indeed. People learn to love yourself. What's your good enough for now framework for making decisions or taking action when waiting for perfect or perfect conditions mean stagnation?
Yes. So in my coaching program, I develop a set of internal value statements. So, for example, I have my own and I have a whole list, but a few of them are I'm loyal to myself, I'm authentic, I speak my truth, I don't sweep things under the rug, et cetera, et cetera. So, anytime I have to make a decision because a lot of times in life we get pulled to these external influences or we become indecisive, but when you have an internal values compass that you can stick to and stick to every time you have to make a decision, then even though if it may not feel good, because sometimes you have to set a boundary and it doesn't necessarily feel good because you might feel guilty or you're afraid you offended the other person, as long as you're sticking to your values and living in integrity, then it's always the right decision.
Indeed, the right decision, Miss Angie. How do you discern when dropping a goal or project, standard, or obligation is an act of wisdom, not failure?
Mm. I mean, I think you could argue that nothing's really a failure as long as you learn from it and correct the mistake the next time. Because as anyone who's read my book or who will read my book, you will see I make the same mistakes over and over and over again. And it wasn't until I actually started learning my lessons and correcting those mistakes that I started to love myself and live a more fulfilling life. So I think that's the true wisdom and success in life because there's always something to learn from a failure.
Again, very well said, Miss Angie. Very empowering answer. What tiny 5 minute daily habits create the biggest impact on sustaining momentum without burnout?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think I think a huge habit that is good for burnout or anything is just having a positive internal voice, because that's one thing that I struggled with a long time in my life is having that critical inner voice. So if I was resting, my critical inner voice considered that lazy. Whereas to prevent burnout, you do need that period of rest, and it's actually an act of self care. So, a huge part of that could be reprogramming the critical inner voice in your head to be more self compassionate and taking that rest when you need it instead of burning yourself out.
Don't afraid to take the risk, people. Take the risk. Who knows? You will be the next Miss Angie, writing, running, and sleepers. How can they, or how can the very things that feel overwhelming, like kids, chores, or interruptions, become unexpected sources of creativity or grounding?
That's a good question. I think you definitely have to have a very open heart and open mindset. I used to be the kind of person I had like a very strict routine, and like anything that disrupt that routine would give me anxiety. But again, when you're like in the flow of alignment and loving yourself and doing things that bring you joy, you almost find serendipity in the unexpected things, even if they may seem unpleasant at the time. A lot of times, again, maybe it's teaching you something. Maybe it's teaching you patience. Maybe it's teaching you not to be so structured. So I think there's a lot of surprises in life when you are open to the unexpected.
Miss Angie, as a self love advocate and a self love coach or love coach, an author too, what are your short term and long term goals?
Well, my short term goal, I actually just started my self love coaching business. So I'm getting that off the ground. I actually quit. I was working in corporate America and it was really toxic for me. So, in an act of self love, I quit that and I started my self love coaching business. So, my short term goal is to get that up and running. And then my long term goal is to write another book. I actually already started on it. So, eventually one day I will finish it and publish it.
Looking forward for that book, Miss Angie. You are most welcome to come back and let's talk about it on book 101.
I would love that.
And good luck to your goals and looking forward for more success. What would be your piece of advice for those people out there who want to have a book too, as well as to be a coach in terms of self-love?
Honestly, just believing in yourself, because after I published my book, so many people told me that they have stories to tell and want to write a book, but they're scared. But if I can do it, anyone can do it. So I think if you have a story, everyone has a story to tell. So if you have a story to tell and you want to tell it to the world, if I can do it, anyone can do it. So we want to hear your stories.
You can do it, people, if you have the passion to write, and share to the world and stop procrastinating.
Yes.
Miss Angie, how did writing this book help you rediscover or redefine your core identity beyond roles and titles?
So actually, it's interesting because it took me a long time to assume the identity of an author, because I it just didn't resonate with me, because again, like I was still in my period of low self-worth. So I was afraid to even call myself an author for the longest time. But that was a good lesson in self-love, because if you do something, you are something. So again, like if you have a story to tell and want to write a book, then, and if you're writing a book, then you're an author. So I I think identity is who you are. It doesn't necessarily have to be a title. And I don't think we're confined to any identity or title for the rest of our lives. It can be very fluid, and just own who you are and shine.
How has your writing this book in terms of your personality?
Has it changed my personality?
Yes.
Um Well, in a way, yes, because one of my fears used to be, I used to be afraid of allowing myself to be seen, and I still am to a certain extent. But there's a lot of intimate details of my life in this book. And again, it's very vulnerable. So I am being seen. And again, it was terrifying, but vulnerability works the opposite way that we think it does, because nobody has came to me with criticism about all the mistakes I made or whatever. People come to me telling me how relatable it was, or I cannot tell you how many times people have told me, oh, that exact same thing happened to me. And so, if anything, it changed me to encourage myself to be more vulnerable, because I see how it connects you to other people. Because vulnerability does connect other people, which was the whole goal of the book, but I didn't expect it to happen to myself.
Yes. And congratulations for your debut book, Miss
Thank
Angie.
you.
Congratulations. How does your book push back against the toxic grind mindset, especially for women carrying invisible loads?
Yes. So that's a huge part of my struggle, because everything I went through in this book, I felt like I had to do it on my own. So, one of the lessons that I learned, and I didn't state it explicitly in this book, I want to get more into it in my next book, but never underestimate the importance of surrounding yourself with loving and supportive people, because we all go through hard things in life. And I think when we have a support group to lean on, it doesn't have to be that bad. I feel like the problem is we feel alone and isolated in our struggles.
Miss Angie, why is choosing comfort, rest, or saying no often a stronger choice than pushing through inhales?
I would say, because going back to self love, if you don't have strong boundaries, if you're pushing through burnout, those are acts of self abandonment. Because if you're already burned out and you're pushing yourself to do more, that's putting you past your mental, physical, and emotional capacity that you're already at. Not being able to say no to things you want to say no to, or not being able to set boundaries with people who may not be emotionally or even physically safe for you, those are all things that are harmful to yourself and very self sabotaging. So, as a self love coach, you should always be building practices of being aware of these things so that you can, because just the awareness will stop you from getting to the point where it's extreme and dangerous, because then you can do something about it.
Miss Angie, how does humor function as a survival tool and source of perspective in your narrative?
So I have a quirky sense of humor. So I tried to sprinkle that throughout because there are some dark times in there. But I also wrote about an experience that I had in this dark period of time. I took a sketch comedy writing class. And honestly, that was one of the best years of my life because I had never laughed so hard. So, also never underestimate the power of laughter, because no matter how hard of a time you have, like that is probably one of the most healthy things you can do for yourself.
Laughter is the best medicine. People
Yes,
so laugh every minute. I love laughing. So,
me too.
so Miss Angie, before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, people. My other podcast, because my abstract essay is already in fifth season, abstract poetry in second season, and of course my book 101 review in fifth season too. Comedy 101 in second season, and my Food 101 in fifth season as well. Geography 101 is in a fourth season, and my baby podcast Law 101 and Mental Health 101 Love Letters in fourth season, as well as my Movie 101 review and Music 101, Science 101 and Sex 101 in its first season. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. Miss Angie, if readers take just one liberating idea from your book into their daily sprint, what do you hope it is?
Live fearlessly and love yourself.
Yes. Very well said, Miss Angie. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. And we are looking for more and more and more empowering books like this to come. So, can you please invite our listeners to support your book, Running in Sleepers?
Yes, so it is available in paperback, Kindle, and audiobook. It's available paperback, Kindle on Amazon, and audiobook, Audible, and wherever audiobooks are sold.
Yes, people, let's support Miss Angie Hawkins, because if you support her, as I said, more and more and more empowering books like this to come. So, Miss Angie, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
More to come, people. See you soon.